Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Kristen, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. And at Abbey Research, we exist to educate about empathy, which we think is the beginning step of all of us on the planet living a little bit cohesively, more cohesively than we already do, because we don't really live cohesively at all. So we're trying to make that happen, and not in a Hallmark card or Kumbaya way, but in an actual let's do the work and live together kind of thing. And this series is in service of that. It's called Welcome to My World. And I get a chance to talk to fascinating folks who are different than me, which is everybody, about something in their lives that we all need to understand a little bit more, something they're an expert in, a personal story, a hobby of theirs. And today I am joined by someone I have known, I think, since you were 11, if I remember correctly.
Sounds right.
Tom Lebo is an intellectually curious, no stone left unturned Enneagram 6. We have not talked about the Enneagram on this channel too much, so probably
we could dive in if you want.
Knowledge, yeah. I am a 3 for anyone who knows what that means, with a deep interest in chocolate chip cookies, craft cocktails, living room karaoke, and jigsaw puzzles. Professionally, he considers himself an empathetic problem solver who likes to bring organization and structure to complex systems and processes. Personally, he considers himself, well, pretty much the same. And as somebody who has known him since 11, there have been elements of all of those things in there for a long time, but it's also been a real privilege to watch you grow up and figure out who Tom is and the best version of you. And that's what I'd love to talk about today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
Oh, gosh, it's an honor. So part of becoming the healthiest and most holistic version of yourself has been the process of coming out. And I had the privilege of talking to you while you were in that process and kind of in the beginning. And so I'd really love it if you would kind of share with our viewers a little bit of, I guess like the beginning of that, how that went for you, and we'll just kind of go from there.
I think you're alluding to, I, in a panic, texted you or messaged you at one point and was like, I'm gay and I don't know if I'm a Christian anymore and I don't know what to do. And you basically said, where are we getting dinner? And so I so appreciated you and all the different people that have been part of my life. Like, it's one thing for someone I just meet to be like, yeah, being gay is fine. But to have folks that, like you said, have known me since I was a child to really embrace me and say, yeah, that's awesome. We're here to support that. And also, you're just a human still. You're just Tom still. So yeah, do you want me to like talk through how I realized that coming out was even a thing I needed to do? Maybe that's
I'd love that. Let's start there.
Yeah. So Kristen, I know you from, you were my youth leader back in our youth group days. And so grew up in a very loving, supportive environment that kind of like you were introing, like wanted the best for people's lives, but through a limited scope. And I'm not here to talk poorly about that, but it was a highly evangelical conservative upbringing that there were certain ways you had to be. And one of those ways you had to be was straight. And especially if you were a man, one of those ways you had to be was looking to marry a woman and looking to have kids, hopefully. I personally did not experience a lot of pressure from my family to find a wife and to get married, but it was in the culture. Would you agree, Kristen? I mean, I was a child at the time. You were an adult in that culture.
Yeah, like my parents were very like, oh, don't worry about getting married. Like my mom, but like there were comments all the time. Like when I came back freshman year of college, wondering if I had a boyfriend. And I was like, no, but I have a 4.0 GPA.
Right.
Yeah,
Does anyone care about me or just my potential future partner?
Yeah.
And especially for women, I know that's a much bigger burden that is carried. I mean, we could get into all of the different male-specific and female-specific different talks that we both went through in hyper-Christian environments. Yeah. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did.
Because I absolutely believed that stuff then. Yeah. So.
Yep. Yeah. So it was an environment where sex was for marriage, and there wasn't sex education. There wasn't education about consent. There was not education about pleasure. There was not education about really anything. It was sex and sexuality was something that was super shied away from. And at the time, I didn't perceive any hurt from that. At the time, it was cool because I had my best friends were in the youth group. We would go to church. We would go tubing down the Delaware. We would go get cheesesteaks, or we would like hang out with each other's families. So it's strange. I think the strangest part for me in thinking about my coming out journey is that I didn't even think I was gay for a little while, because I was never given that language to use.
That makes sense.
It was all pushed to the extremes. There was a couple, it would come up maybe if there was a gay couple on a TV show, and there would maybe just be a ugh, or like a ooh, like, but there was never, whatever it was, there was no like, you're going to hell if you're gay.
Yeah, we didn't grow up in Westboro Baptist. Like, it was kind of not talked about. Yeah.
Correct. Yep. It was this not talked about thing. But I look back now, and I mean, there were countless boys that I had crushes on when I was in middle school, high school, and I just didn't have the language for that at the time. So I think my reckoning, so to speak, didn't happen to my early 20s.
Okay.
I went to college. I got involved in a campus ministry. It was kind of that same culture of like, straight is the way, marriage is the goal. No one put any particular pressure on me, but I kind of was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't, and there's all this shame too around, pornography and lust. Like, you're taught that being sexually attracted, you might as well gouge your eye out. There were these comparisons made. And so I just suppressed, and I packed everything down really, really far. Started to acknowledge that I was same-sex attracted. That's actually the terminology. Are you familiar with the same-sex attracted terminology that's used?
I am, but I don't know if the folks watching are. So if you wouldn't mind unpacking that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the culture that I grew up in, which I think the best label is evangelical Christianity, kind of very white-centric evangelical Christianity. Gay, even the word gay was seen as like a bad word, because people aren't gay, people choose to be gay. That's kind of the agreed upon view of homosexuality, which I don't even like the word homosexuality. I hate saying it. Brings back too many memories. But yeah,
it's a real dog whistle for a lot of us. Yeah.
The word that gets applied is same-sex attraction, with the idea being that attractions are attractions. Maybe you can't change your attractions, but you can change the way that you act on them. And so being gay is acting on your same-sex attraction. And so any Christian who wants to honor God with their life would choose to not act on those attractions and become celibate. And I'm also not here to speak ill of folks who are gay or queer and choosing to be celibate, because I know that there are many folks who have chosen that path. And so, but
there are people that I know we both love that have chosen that path. And that's just, the point is the choice is messy instead of straightforward.
That's exactly the point. There is no choice, or if celibacy is the only option you're offering, I find that problematic. I find it harmful to kids who are trying to make sense of, why am I tingly? Why am I excited when a boy sits down next to me? These are things that are natural, that I was told were not natural. And so there's a lot of, I think my coming out story is very specific to having had this evangelical Christian upbringing.
Sure.
And so that is really a key factor. Like when I first came out as SSA, that was in a Bible study that I was a part of. The leader of the Bible study had shared that he, although married to a woman, had battled with or struggled with, which is the common language here, struggled with same-sex attraction. He and his wife prayed about it and decided that they were still meant to be partners. They have a family, they have children of their own. I'm no longer in touch with that person, but at the time, it gave me hope that I could live this life that still fit in this evangelical box, even though I had these feelings towards men. So that was kind of the first time that I started talking to other people honestly about what I was feeling in my body. which is sad. That was early 20s before I felt safe talking about that. But and but I'm grateful for it. And even though at that moment, I thought that my life would go down the path of same-sex attraction is something I experienced, but I've chosen to marry a woman. And I went on dates with girls, and it's almost funny to me at this point. I feel terrible though. I was an awful date. It never got to the point. There was one person in my college years, a woman that I am still friends with, that we were boyfriend and girlfriend, although I was just a terrible partner. I'm not built to be a partner to women. That's how gay I am.
It's okay. I dated quite a lot of men that have since come out of the closet, and it's weird, but
Okay.
if you were respectful, I'm sure it wasn't traumatic for her in the same way that you may have guilted yourself into believing.
Sure. And I tried. I think everyone now is fine with it. I'm actually in touch with most of these girls still, and if not, good friends with them. But it's interesting, I tried to force myself into this box for so long, and it's different than a lot of stories. Like, some folks knew they were gay when they were 8 or 12 or young, and just held this secret. I kind of discovered my secret over the course of trial and error with dating women, and finally got to a point where I said, something's got to give, because quite frankly, I want to have sex. Like, that's kind of as straightforward as it is. And I thought, why should I not be able to have enjoyable sex? I just view it as part of the human experience as an adult to have consensual, enjoyable sex. And so I started dabbling, and I feel really lucky that when I kind of decided, all right, I'm going to start dating men, I jumped into a relationship I jumped into 2 relationships. One lasted 2 months, one lasted a year. And I did a lot of my reckoning in those relationships. I feel lucky for that, because a lot of guys, when they come out as gay, jump into hooking up, and strangers or people that really don't care about them. And it's not really, it's a fun and exciting and energetic place to be with casual sex, but for a young person trying to reconcile their faith and their sexuality, and just being a recent college grad and trying to get my footings in my career and with my family and everything.
Yeah, you had some stuff going on. Yeah.
I have some stuff going on. And so I feel really lucky to have been in a stable relationship where it was safe to say, my boyfriend that I was with for a year, I told him at the beginning, I'm not sure if this is okay even, but I want to, because I see the potential for, something between us. It probably was not elegant. It was probably just like, he, I like you. Like, you're nice. But we had a beautiful year-long relationship. And that was kind of the catalyst for me owning gay as a label. And that's how I identify now. I identify as a gay man. I don't know, you said in your intro that you are bringing on folks to talk about that are experts or that are hobbyists. And so, like, I'm not sure if being gay, if I'm an expert, or if it's a hobby of mine, or if it's some
however
other
you want to
thing.
call it, Tom. It's more just that, like, you've got a story that isn't mine, and a story that isn't a lot of other people's. I have sat through and walked along with, dozens and dozens of folks that have had coming out stories. But one of the things that I've noticed is that everybody's is different. In the same way that, like, everybody's, heterosexual engagement story is different. Like, everybody's relationships are different with your own body. And even though I am definitely heterosexual and I'm definitely cisgendered, I have a lot of the same body baggage, because we still grew up in the same purity culture and the same way that people talk. And I know lots and lots of people on all ends of the sexuality spectrum, on all points, that grew up the way we grew up and struggle with the same stuff, no matter who our partner is, no matter if we're in I know a polyamorous family right now who all grew up in purity culture, and they're still bumping up against that stuff. And, it's all, I find it really, really lovely that you're willing to share how messy it was in terms of that, because it's not, the story is not just messy for in your gayness, it's messy in your body and coming out of evangelicalism.
Sure.
And that's such a intertwined but also separate story. And so I really, really loved how you articulated that. So because you brought it up, and because I also just love exploring faith journeys with folks, what does faith mean to you at this point? I know that the label Christian is not something that you embrace any longer, but what does that kind of look like in your day-to-day life anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've become a bit apathetic, truth be told. I think I still have like a longing and an interest to talk about spiritual things. And to me, spiritual things is anything beyond what's the weather or what did you eat today. And so conversations about career or conversations about relationships or about family or philosophy or religion or art or nature, like those are all spiritual endeavors to me.
I like that.
I think I've left a lot of the ritual behind, and I'm still trying to figure out what rituals make sense for me, because I think they provide a grounding. And that's kind of looking back on my years as identifying as a Christian. I think what I got out of it was the ritual nature of attending church and getting really involved and being like kind of good at something and finding a niche with being a helper. And I think you're the same way. I mean, you were a youth leader, so you know exactly, like, there's something nice about feeling like you're giving to this collective body that's trying to do life together. And so I'm still trying to find that community where I feel comfortable doing life. I've tried being in a couple of different progressive Christian spaces, and it's just not a fit for me. The conversations that are had there are interesting, but I haven't found my home there yet. So
that makes total sense. And
it's like a non-answer answer.
No, it's not a non-answer. It's an answer. It's that, I mean, when we teach religion to children, and this is just all religions, we have to teach it as very concrete, because all children can understand is concrete. And where a lot of religious communities fail, in my opinion, in terms of development, is that then we don't ever begin to teach it as messy. And we continue to teach it as concrete, even well into adulthood. And we teach it as a polemic, and we teach it, and instead it has to be, well, this is the piece that makes sense right now for me in my life and what it looks like. This is the piece I know doesn't make sense. And here are the pieces I'm wrestling with. And I mean, I've been rewriting and writing my faith system, I mean, since I first moved to Northern Ireland in 2005. And there are congregations I find a lot of home with. There are congregations I thought I found home with, and they turned out to be, abusive or really dysfunctional, and I had to get out. And then that shifted my faith. And it's all been a continuum. And one of the things I hope to do with our work here at Abbey Research is to say, like, when somebody tells you that they are a Christian, that is not one definition or one identity. When somebody tells you they are Jewish, that does not mean that, this thing. It all means all the things. When you say you are gay, that is not the same as when my friend Jeff says he is gay.
Right.
And we all have to hold each other's stories for what they are. So I think it's a really great answer, because I think, just as your former youth leader, I'd be nervous if you said you had it all figured out at this point, because that was a massive amount of tumult in your 20s to then put it all back together so quickly.
Yeah, that's true. I think the undoing, you mentioned going to Northern Ireland and kind of starting to rewrite your story. And that's kind of what happened with me as well. I've been a part of, or at least experienced, Christian faith communities in Spain, in Kenya, in Honduras, you just have to drive down the street in the city. You don't have to leave the country to see a different expression of Christianity. You can just drive around for 20 minutes and see it. And I think that is where my undoing began as well, is seeing all of these faithful Christians living out what it means to be Christian in such drastically different ways. And I just gravitated, as I saw, like, wait, I do get to pick and choose. That was always kind of presented to me as the worst thing to do, is to pick and choose. But really, the beauty is in finding the meaning in that faith structure. And I've just gravitated towards Christians, or really anybody who is taking a stand for justice and for the marginalized and for the oppressed. And that is my, I mean, I don't wear the badge of like, I am a marginalized person, but being gay in a
you are a legally
Christian
protected class. Yeah. But you're also,
yeah.
you're a legally protected class. When like, you know, I always say when we think about marginalized voices, like just look at any sort of equal opportunity employment statement. Any of those categories that people list are marginalized. And, you know, your other identities, and you know this, like being a white man means that you're not quite as some others, but that doesn't mean that being gay isn't a marginalization. And that growing up Christian and being gay isn't a marginalization in that particular intersection. So yeah.
And I think it's softened my heart too, just towards issues of marginalization, because the question of are white gay men safe in America, like that's been resolved, and I have a lot of, you know, gay ancestors to thank for that. And so now I see it as like there are bigger justice issues to delve into. And when it comes to faith, kind of tying it into the conversation we're having here, the faith communities that are really invested in that are the ones that I'm like, that's Christianity, or that's a Christianity that I can say that's awesome. Whether or not I really believe in the scriptures and all of that is kind of an aside. I think it's the classic, like, you'll be known by the fruits of your labor. Isn't there something in the Bible about that? Yep. There's so many Bible verses that I'm like, yeah, that's just like a general adage.
Oh, doesn't everybody just know this? Everybody. Yeah. We will be known by the fruits of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, and self-control. And I think if we really did those things, then yeah, I mean, there's a song, there's a civil rights song, They Will Know We Are Christians by Our Love. That's what you're probably really thinking of. That came about in the Jesus movement in the 60s and 70s and became really, really popular. I mean, and the world, the Christianity that we grew up in had a very specific definition of that love. And what I think a lot of us who have grown up in that generation, not just our particular church, but I mean, everyone I meet and most people I went to seminary with, what we have seen as our journey past that adolescence has been blowing up that idea of love and figuring out what it really, really looks like. So yeah. And I love, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say inclusion, like one of the thought pictures that really resonates with me as I kind of walked through my coming out and through my faith, rewriting of my faith journey, is there's always room at the table. That to me was so, and is so comforting, especially to hear from the mouths of Christians to say, everyone's welcome and there's no but attached to that. There's no, you're welcome, but we want to change you. There's no, you're welcome, but there's a couple things in life that you need to rethink. Certainly I appreciate when folks do that, you know, if there's harmful habits that they're seeing in my life after being in relationship with me, have at it. But to say, oh, you're gay, therefore you're in this category, I don't have time for it. I don't, it's painful. It's painful still. And so I really, I try to avoid settings where I feel that there's not that sense of the table is big and you're welcome.
I absolutely love, I mean, there's always room at the table and everyone is wanted and welcome is a key part of both my life and the work that we do. So that's a great place to pause here. I definitely want to have you back to talk about the Enneagram. So we'll do that in another video and unpack the Enneagram a little bit for folks. First of all, Tom, this was one of the best conversations I've had. Thank you so much for engaging so heartfully. And if you watched this and liked it, resonated with anything we said, honestly, that thumbs up button down below on the YouTube really does help my channel. And if you like these kind of conversations, we have them all the time in a variety of ways. So subscribe and hit the bell button to make sure you don't miss a single one. If you're somebody who is interested in books, and reading about empathy, inclusion, equity, and all of these other kind of lovely but messy topics, we have a sister channel called Abby Research Reads, where Dr. Aaron and I review books that help change how we see the world in the hopes that it will help how you change how you see the world. No matter how you engage with us, please know that we want to find us comments, questions, anything. We love conversation just like Tom does, and we see everything as an opportunity to grow a little bit more. So again, thanks to my guest, Tom Lebo, and thanks to you for joining us, and I'll see you next time on Welcome to My World.
Thank you.